Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Hi there, thanks.
So we were just talking before recording, and it was already a podcast. And I'm like, damn, we're getting some good stuff in here. So you teed up my first question brilliantly, and it's a great place to start. Why is digital censorship important? And even if you're someone that thinks that your digital habits are of no interest to someone whatsoever, why is it still also important for that person?
Yeah, I think about certain freedoms that people enjoy in their life, and depending on the country that you live in, you might have things that are codified in the legal structure of the country, or other ones might just be within your community. But we all have this human right to be able to speak freely, to be able to express ourselves freely, to congregate and choose who we want to associate with. And that has spread online, and as it's moved online, you have this push and pull between governments and borderless communication with people. You and I live in totally different countries, but here we are having a conversation together, right? You are bound by the rules of the jurisdiction that you live in. I'm bound by my jurisdiction. Yet we also kind of are bound by this larger global internet that we're on. And so digital censorship is this weird thing where local governments try to step in and pull back what people can say and do, even though really we kind of live outside of them in a lot of ways. And so I don't know if it's this old way of doing things that's trying to hold on to the power and authority that it has while it's losing grip. Um, but most people don't really think about it on their daily lives. They just go about doing what they do, and they think, well, I don't have anything to say that's going to run afoul of the government, and so I don't need to have really protection for my digital life. Um, but it's really when you need it that you wish you had it. And so we need people out there kind of building tools and building ways for us to protect those freedoms, so that we don't one day need the freedoms and they aren't there anymore and the tools aren't there for it. Not sure if that answers your question, but
No, no, completely. It's
big
a
one to start with.
Oh, absolutely, Mark. And it's very exciting to get to spend an hour with you and talk through what does that mean? Um, so was there a personal experience in your life where this subject became important for you?
Yeah, there's not like a single instance where I suddenly was censored or I was being held back, but what it is I've done a few different startups, been early employee at a few different companies, and I was able to kind of see inside of how the cloud works. Right, we all talk about the cloud. We put our data in the cloud. We have these apps, and everybody kind of knows that phrase, but a lot of people don't really understand what it means. And so it was one of the company I was at is we were doing online backup software where people could back up their computers, and all of their photos, all of their documents, everything that they had could be backed up to our servers. And it's secure, right? We have this you log in with your password, it copies all your files over using what they say, quote, military grade encryption. But ultimately, what ends up is this large database of files of other people's computers in this huge cloud infrastructure at this company. And then me, as a trusted employee of the company, I was one of the engineers, but sometimes I had to help do support. So I would be able to go in and see people's files because they would ask me to help them get their photos back because their hard drive had a crash. And it was in that moment where I started looking around and seeing I can actually see all this data. Like, I shouldn't be looking at someone's birthday photos or their family vacation photos or something that they did. Um, this is not mine. This feels invasive. And it was this light bulb moment of, if I can see this, everybody else at the company that has the same privilege I do can see this. That means that if there's a court order, which we have this all the time, where a local court or a government will come to us and say, we need these files for this investigation that we're doing. Suddenly, all these files that we thought were just private. I took a photo of my kid's birthday party. I thought that was private, but really, as soon as I snapped that photo, it was automatically copied from my phone to someone else's computer called the cloud, and it became available for hundreds, maybe thousands of people, and then others down the line that I didn't know existed that would get access to that photo. And so that was just, it reframed the way that I looked at the internet. And then there are so many points at which censorship can come in. Um, Governments could step in, companies could step in, and you create these gates where people can shut the gate on you. Um, and Yeah, that was kind of a moment that I just kind of had an awakening for that. But then also kind of tangential to that is when blogs really started to become a big thing. Everybody was writing their blogs, whether they were family ones or they were company ones. And I remember I had a friend who had spent years by that point, a couple of years, really curating their family blog. And they had it all hosted in Google, and they lost access to their Google account for some reason. And there was no warning. They didn't know why. They couldn't log in, but it wasn't because they didn't have the right password. Google had basically frozen their account, and suddenly all of these memories that they had written about and all of the photos that they had posted were just shut out, and they couldn't access it. It had been taken offline, and they were given no reason why. Um, and it was, to me, that was just a moment where it didn't affect me personally, but it affected a dear friend that I had. And I just saw like how powerless we are to some of these companies when we give them all of the data. It really becomes their data. It's not our data anymore. And they have total control, whether it's accidental or intentional, to just turn it off whenever they want to.
Yeah, and it doesn't almost matter if there's some kind of nefarious angle to some dissident somewhere has got an opinion that someone doesn't like. How are we going to try and throttle that issue? Okay, we're going to go to these three companies. One of them is their bank. One of them is the one that has all of their data via their phone, and the other one is, who knows? It could just be any old person at home that, for some reason, their account just doesn't open. Wow. Okay. And what I love, Mark, is how what brings us to today is the sum of every decision we've made thus far, this very present moment. And the experiences that we collect along the way sometimes don't really make sense. But in hindsight, you can patch them together and go, this is actually now the direction I should go in. And I feel like that's obviously what you're doing. But so those were some pain points. What has been inspired as a result of going through those issues you saw?
Well, every time I start working on something, whether it is a personal project or a job that I take at a company, or now I've started a company, I've always I've wanted to provide for my family. Like, first and foremost, I have a family and I want to provide for them. Like, that's what I do.
Hmm.
But I also want to do that in a way that I feel like I'm giving back to society and I'm doing something for the world, whether that is the large W world where I'm actually making an impact globally, or that is the world around me or the world of a few people. And so, um, one of the companies I worked at was an education startup where we were trying to make software that allowed students to learn better and professors to teach better to their students and leverage technology in ways that made their lives easier. And I've worked on apps where kids could, if they had a speech impediment and they grew up with a stutter, or they grew up not being able to say their R correctly, they could use our iPad app that we had and work with a therapist and gain that skill to be able to speak more eloquently, but also have more confidence in their life as they are interacting with friends and their peers in school. So I've always tried to use and build technology that helps people in their lives, not just helping them to make money, but really like truly trying to empower people and trying to give people more confidence, give people some extra value in their life. So that's really kind of, I feel like, what I took from that very first job that I had, where I started to understand how the whole cloud works and how technology works, and like, what can we do that's good with this technology, rather than just how can I make the most money, how can I get somebody addicted to a game and just make this game that just like drives it up the charts. And you mentioned, I think before we started recording, how can I play to an algorithm, right? I don't want to just be playing this algorithm game. I really want to be building something that brings people actual value and joy in their lives.
Yeah, and the context there being, you asked me before we started recording who my core audience is as part of this podcast, and I explained that it was changing, but mainly because I had changed and essentially had realized that chasing the algorithm by hammering YouTube in particular was not something that I wanted to go and do. And now that I step back from that and really want to spend my time and attention on Nostr, what's interesting is how my Nostr experience has improved. Just every time I log in, I'm seeing more high quality content and getting better feedback from the accounts that I've started spending more time inputting energy into. So there's very strange process where, like, instead of turning up on someone else's digital real estate where you are essentially rent seeking until they don't want you any longer, you're building a ecosystem of connections where you have put capital essentially into what you get back, and that's a big shift. So it's fun to see how other people are also doing that. And Nost is where we came across each other, and how we've even organized this podcast, which I think is such a cool thing to have been able to do, because everyone's like, oh, Nostr, no one uses it. Nothing's going on there. It's like, well, actually, that's not true. So maybe I'll give you a simple question now, Mark, which is like, why are you using Nostr?
Yeah. I got on Nostr the same way that a lot of people did a few years ago. Jack Dorsey put out a tweet about it.
Mm.
And that's when I heard about it. And I was like, oh my goodness, you have private public key pairs that are used for your online communication. And when you create a message, it is signed with your private key. And now it can be sent around the world. And everybody knows that that message you just wrote is really from your private key. And that's something that you said. And it just clicked for me. I was like, that is how we should be doing things. When I have a Twitter account, X, or Facebook or Instagram, people, we kind of think it's the same way, right? We sign in with a username and a password, but really that's just granting us permission to go say something on someone else's computer in the cloud. Whereas with Nostr, it is a way for me to create a piece of content and then say, this is from me. And then all I have to do is just broadcast that out. And I can copy it to a whole bunch of people's computers, but it's something that I know I'm sharing publicly. And it's this subtle difference to I think to a lot of people who don't really like know about private key, public key, cryptography. It's a very odd difference, but it has such a profound effect, especially when you bring in this whole AI thing that we're dealing with now, where pretty much any video that's posted online, the first thing people ask is this real? Right? Grok, is this real? Is this true? Is this fake? Is this AI? And so now we have this tool where we can start to show, well, yeah, maybe you can't prove that this video is real, but I can prove that was spoken from me, or I have access to my private key. I know that it's coming from me, and everybody else knows that it's coming from me. So that way, if you're on Twitter, Elon or some employee there could just go in and just say anything on my behalf. And now the burden is on me to prove that that wasn't me who said that. And it could be very damaging information that is supposedly said from my account. And so I just love knowing that with Nostr, I can do things and have authenticity with it. And I guess I would kind of ask you, maybe if I could ask you a question.
No, please, Mark. Anything.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, our interface with Nostr is a Twitter-like app, an X-like experience. Curious how you view Nostr, if you think that that's really going to continue to be the main interface, or if you see other ways that you think Nostr really continues to grow and people maybe experience Nostr through different interfaces. Just curious what your thoughts are there.
Great question. To to dovetail on the back of kind of what you were saying was I just never fully understood how much heavy lifting a Facebook, an Instagram, a Twitter was doing for me until I started using Nostr. And so I was like, oh, I want to put a video up. Well, how do I do that? So, oh, well, you can't. You need to host it yourself. Oh, okay. Well, how do I do that? Oh, okay. Here's nostr.build. Okay, cool. Sign up, boom, upload your own video. Okay, then you can release it onto the Nostr network. You're like, oh my God. So hang on. All this information I've ever put on a traditional social media platform is somewhere being stored by them, where the user experience has been incentivized to be as easy and as simple as possible to get you to use it, but at what cost? And well, the cost is quite simple. You're batting on someone else's digital real estate that if you misbehave in a way they don't like, or you say something you shouldn't say, or their advertising partners are like, we don't like this guy over here because they're saying things about stuff that we don't want to have talked about, well, they're gone, right? And this whole idea of freedom of reach is not the same as freedom of speech. And so you can go on and say what you like, but literally no one's going to see it because it'll get buried. And you can search for accounts and you find them eventually, but like then they're not, the algorithm is not being coached to show them to anyone. And so my Nostr experience is so different. It really couldn't be. It's almost like a complete opposite. And when I get a bit spiritual these days, I'm like, that's so healthy, right? It's this centralization versus decentralization. It's the pendulum swinging back in a different direction. And like I use Primal all the time, and what's interesting about that experience is how much better it's got versus when I first started using it. And for example, you got to use nostr.build. You upload some video or some content. You're actually doing that yourself. And you're seeing, that's how that actually gets pieced together. The process of it improving, I think, is interesting because initially you don't follow anyone. So, okay, well, hang on. How do I find any information on this fucking thing? And actually, even finding accounts can still be quite difficult, right? I had Scott Deedles on the podcast recently, and I just typed in his name, couldn't find him, had him on the pod. He's like, I'm on Nostr, searched Lantern Bitcoin, found that, and found his account. But it's still not working as well as it could. But the point is I see the information that's posted by the accounts that I follow. That's it. Yes, you could do some trending stuff that a client might show you, such as Primal, and they have different qualifications for like what actually should make the trending page in terms of the popularity of a post. But at the end of the day, it's just a chronological timeline of the people that I follow. And you're like, interesting. And there are people that I start following that post all this stuff I don't like, get rid of them. But there's been a proof of work involved in curating my Nostr experience. And that's been a fascinating process. So, I mean, have you been similar like that, Mark? Like, because I feel like I created a key pair, logged in, I was like, this is garbage. I'm not going to go near this thing. And then I did it again. And then the client had slightly improved and I tried a different client. And then I just really started to think about why it was important. And it's like headwinds versus tailwinds. And the headwinds for Nostr is like the UX is not great. There's not enough users on there. There's information that you need to get that's actually elsewhere, and therefore you have to go and find it. But then the tailwinds are like censorship is getting more and more rife. And what's authentic? Like, that's such a great word that you use. It's like, I don't want to get information that's not authentic. That's a complete waste of my time. So I'm actually willing to accept the cost of a UX experience that isn't as good as elsewhere in exchange for better value, basically. Has your Nostr experience improved over time, Mark?
Yeah, no, it's definitely improved. And I still use it like a Twitter product, a Twitter competitor. And like you were saying, when I first got on there, it continued to remind me of all the data that we're giving over to other people as you start to piece together these things, right? Like Nostr.build. I remember going on there and being like, how do I upload a photo? And then as soon as I go to upload this photo to Nostr.build, I think, well, wait a minute, are they going to have the location data of this photo that I'm uploading? Because I don't know this guy that's running Nostr.build. And I'm about to transmit this thing over to him.
And I don't know the answer to that. I've never checked. I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I believe they scrub the a lot of these services scrub out. I know Primal specifically will get rid of your location data when you upload it.
Okay.
Um, but no, it's good to think about these things, right? And we usually don't, especially on something like Instagram. They actually promote keeping your location data because they want to show where you were so that all your friends can see where you were at that moment.
Mm,
It's this is a really funny phenomenon. I don't know if you have children or how old they are, but
mm,
my kids will share their location with their friends. It's like this new thing that they all do. And they'll be like, oh, I see where my friends all are right now, and they know where I am. And to me, well, one, I don't want my kids sharing where the location is, but they do it. And then two, it creates like this anxiety that they have, where now not only do they feel like, if you would go to school on a Monday, and everybody's talking about this party that they went to, and you didn't go to the party, you feel bad, right?
mm,
Well, now the kid is sitting at home on their phone, and they see that all their friends are at one location together at some party, and they are not with them. And then they start to see all the photos come up on Instagram that they're not at, and so now they're just feeling down in that moment, and then they still have to go to school and interact with all these people and feel down again. And so there are all these ways that technology has kind of created these abilities for us to like have anxiety, have depression, have these weird social interactions. And maybe there's another side to that we come out and we're all better for it because we figured out how to use it. Um, I feel like that was kind of a tangent to what I was talking about, but there is all this data that we're just giving out to different systems. And when I got on Nostr, it continued to be this moment where I realized, okay, it's a reminder. I'm giving away this data. I'm giving away this information. Who is this person running it? What can they do with it? Do I want to be giving it to them? So it helped me kind of start to sanitize my technology use a little bit more. With Nostr, I got on right away. I was really excited about it. I used it a lot for the first few months, and then I kind of took a break for a little bit because, like you said, it was just kind of this wild, wild west. This was back in like early 2023 now, and I took a break, and then I came back like 6 months later, and it's like, oh hey, this thing is still on. People are still posting, and I could see the difference between using Twitter and using Nostr, and just like the feed I was getting. The stuff on X, no matter how hard you try, becomes very politicized. At least in my world where I am in the United States, it's constantly trying to shove things into your feed that feel divisive, that make you feel bad afterwards when you're done. And I didn't want to see that. I still use X because I do it for work, and I do it for industry news, especially with AI moving so fast. But when I'm really wanting to take a moment to just kind of like interact with the internet, I go to Nostr, I go to Primal, I get on there because I feel like that's where a lot of more high quality content is, or high quality discussion. Um, and I really enjoy that. Whereas when I feel like when I'm on X, I feel like I am just being kind of shoved around inside of an algorithm constantly. That's been my experience, at least.
and how you feel is so important because there's I've been making content for like 5 years now in different guises. Worked at a few different businesses, had a different podcast of my own, and I'm now creating this one. And so I've toyed around with lots of these different platforms, and there's no doubt that I feel more relaxed as a Nostr user. And that's because you're not being psychologically played in the same way that the legacy status quo social media platforms have begun to do in order to keep your attention because they make money from your eyeballs. Um, what would be fun about Nostr, for example, is if you did take a break for 6 months and then you log back in, you're like, oh, hey guys, took 6 months off. All the same people would still be there and you wouldn't get fed an algorithm um, when you come back. So I think it's kind of like you get to keep your work in like a truer capital accumulation sense. I want to answer your question more directly that you brought up earlier about do I just use it as a Twitter-like experience? Thus far, yes, but I'm interested in early stage equity investing and startups, and I've seen some pitch decks for other stuff that is really interesting. For example, one was around medical records, and it was a problem that just resonated straight away. Where it's like it's so goddamn annoying when you go into a practitioner's office, and it might be a chiropractor or an osteopath or whoever it is that you're going to get treatment from. Like, so here's a piece of paper. what have you done in your life? You're like, I'm 37 years old now, mate. What do you want to know? When I threw myself down a mountain as a 19-year-old on a pair of skis, or when I had a motorbike accident, or when I was sick 2 days ago? Do you know what I mean? And so
Mm-hmm.
the concept that they were highlighting was with a Nostr key pair, you could, it's like it's got the potential to better manage the blend of secrecy and privacy. And so I want to selectively withhold some information from the world, and that I'm going to keep. But for this chiropractor, great, you can see my medical history. Here it is. And having that controlled by the user rather than some either third party private business that is a honeypot for hackers, or a government that, heaven forbid, might weaponize it in some kind of political sense. That was a cool concept. And I also saw some stuff around insurance policies. I think really what it boils down to in terms of like the non-Twitter like experience that you could have on Nostr is the idea of a digital identity. And it's not, oh, hey guys, by the way, we're the European Union, and because we feel like it, everyone's got to have this digital ID, and it's going to be connected to this CBDC that we're about to roll out. And yeah, like we're the good guys, right? So, we're going to make it really easy for you to use. And anyone that doesn't like it, well, we're all going to start, we're going to start taxing them more highly. We're going to take away anyone's financial services licenses that want to do things that are free and open source. And, it's a crazy world that we live in today, that the ability for censorship is just so high. So it's like, wouldn't it be interesting if this information was all in the hands of the user? And that's what I think Nostr can become.
Yeah. Well, we went through this worldwide event 5 or 6 years ago where we learned what governments can do if they have information about us, right? And
Yep.
information that seemed harmless at the time, suddenly it's like, well, you need to have this little piece of paper that shows that you were injected with something in order to go eat at a restaurant that you've eaten
Yes.
at
To get a
for
coffee.
10 years in your life, right? To go get a coffee. And I mean, this is the constant conversation with privacy discussions of like, I don't have anything to hide, right? Why do I need to care about privacy? I have nothing. I'm not doing anything
Yes.
bad. I'm not a
I'm just a
criminal.
normal guy.
I'm
Yeah.
just a normal guy. Yeah, but it's like you said, that saying of being able to selectively reveal yourself to the world. That's really what we all deserve as human beings, and every single person does it, even if they don't realize they're doing it. But we are inside our house. We close our door. We maybe close the windows or pull the drapes. There are all sorts of reasons why we want to shut ourselves off at certain moments, and we're not doing any bad things. But then we step outside and we selectively reveal ourselves. What do we do before we step outside? We usually get dressed. Maybe we do our hair. If we have makeup, we do our makeup. We make ourselves presentable to the world, and we do that intentionally. And that all comes back to privacy, really. And so you talk about these medical records, and that's a cool concept to be able to have control over that and cryptographically own your own medical history with your Nostr key pair. I think that's really cool. And I don't know if you've ever tried to get medical records from a practitioner that you went to in the past, but it's like very difficult to get your data back from them.
Wow.
If if you show up to a new medical office, like you said, they give you that piece of paper you need to fill out. If you were like, hey, I actually did all this at the previous place, can I just like go copy that and bring it over here? That process is like almost non-existent to do. It's going to take you probably weeks to get information from your previous person, and then it's not in the same format that it needs to be to give to the new person. So I think that's an interesting concept to be able to use Nostr to say, no, this is my data. These are my health records. I've collected them all, and here I'm going to now transmit them to you, but only selectively transmit the stuff that I want to. I think that's a really cool use for this technology, and really comes back to like people in Nostr love to say that this is a new way of building the internet. I do think that's possible. I think that the legacy internet still plays a part in that somehow. I haven't quite figured this out, but I do think that Nostr becomes this really important layer infused on the internet of this digital identity that kind of turns everything on its head. If we really kind of extrapolate it out long term and see like, where could this all go? What if we rebuilt the internet where all of us have this cryptographic identity that we control? How does this behave differently? And you can't really control the flow of information. I think it's really, really fascinating topic to go down, and you can pull almost any technology that's online and say, what if we infuse Nostr into that? How does that change? And things start to look a little different. And I think probably for the better if we can have really good data security, right? You got to keep track of your Nostr keys. Can't lose them. We have to find ways to like let people rotate into a new key and say, this is me on the new key. I think there's stuff to still solve there, but a lot of promising things that can come out of it.
Yeah, just on the key management of your NSEC specifically, this is something that's come up a little bit where it's like, okay, I was just playing around, right? And I was signing up for clients left, right, and center with an NSEC that I had. And I don't know where those businesses even are today, right? Will that create a headache for me in the future? I don't know. The same problem pretty much applies to every early Nostr user because we were all kind of doing the same thing. But
Yeah.
A piece of good advice, it was Corn DeLorean, shout out to that man, that have an NSEC that you just play with and have one that you're using every day, and the one that you use every day you keep very, very private, and the other one you can more liberally sign into things to like give them a test and see what it's like. Mark, and I think this is actually kind of what my podcast trajectory is all about. So much in common with someone like yourself who's clearly done a bunch of stuff in their life that I A, find interesting, but B, we're on Nostr hanging out, and immediately you've got stuff that you completely align with, and I think that's so valuable. I don't want to go the whole way through the podcast and not talk about Maple, and so let's spend a bit of time like hammering that out, because you're building a business. Take me to the starting point. Like, why did you decide to start Maple?
Yeah. Well, most recently, before Maple, I was at Apple, and I'd been there for about 6 years. I was a software engineer over there, and I was working on a project for the company, and it dealt with AI, machine learning, and then Apple does care very much about privacy. It's their public statement that they make. It's the public persona that they put on, but it's something that they actually do care very much about internally. So our project, we had this ability to be invasive with our users and with our customers, and we could learn a lot of information about them through this tool that I was building. Or we could choose to do it with a privacy way and say, let's throw away all the data we don't need, or let's not even collect the data in the first place, because really we only want to get this one piece of information. And that one piece of information does not need to be tied to anybody's identity. And from talking to friends who work at other big tech companies, that conversation just wouldn't have been had. They would have gathered the information and they would have stuck it in a database just in case, right? Oh, we might need this in the future. There might be a way to monetize it in the future. But when I got on this project, within just the first few weeks, I was on a phone call with a privacy lawyer, an internal privacy lawyer at Apple, saying, all right, here's this project you're working on. Talk to me, describe the project to me. So I walked through everything we were working on. They said, okay, here are all the data points that you will likely be collecting along the way. And we don't want you to collect this like 90% of it. And if you do, you have to like explain why and be very intentional about it. So I love that. I love that aspect of it. It makes your work very difficult because now you are having to go through technical hurdles. We had to build brand new technology that we couldn't pull stuff off the shelf and use to help us create this, because that stuff off the shelf was not, it was collecting too much data. So we had to build new tools. So I saw kind of this way that things could be done there. But coming from a bunch of startups, I started to get this itch like, hey, I feel like there's something that can be done outside of Apple. I was getting on Nostr. I was doing a lot of stuff. I've been a Bitcoiner for a long time. And so I saw like, hey, there might be something to build in the Bitcoin space. So really, you and I connected here over Nostr. I actually connected with my co-founder over Nostr as well. He happened to be here locally in Austin. And so I would go to local Austin meetups, and we would go to BitDevs and other meetups together.
Cool.
And so I kind of knew him through there. I knew him through a lot of the podcasts, but ultimately I reached out to him over Nostr and said, hey, I'd love to work together with you. So we teamed up. And as a lot of startups do, you kind of pivot around. So he and a couple other guys were working on Mutiny Wallet at the time, which was a Lightning wallet that you could host in your web browser on your phone. Self-sovereign, privacy, Lightning, which I thought was really cool. So I teamed up with them to work on that. But very quickly, we realized it's difficult to monetize something like a self-custodial Lightning wallet on your phone. And there are people working on that kind of tech, and I applaud them, and I hope that they are very successful. But we decided that just wasn't quite the thing for us. But we had this really strong privacy technology. I had my privacy background from Apple. They had built this really cool thing for a privacy wallet for Bitcoin. And we started to talk to a lot of different developers and say, okay, what tools do you need? We have this really cool privacy platform that we can build and enhance. And time and time again in these conversations, people kept saying, I use ChatGPT every day, and I hate the fact that I'm giving away my information to this other company. Can you make a private version of ChatGPT? So after about 10 of these calls that we had, and pretty much every single one said the same thing, we said, let's build this. Nobody's building it, right? There were some tools out there that are kind of privacy with AI, but it's more like just trust us that we're not keeping track of your data, but really we could be behind the scenes. We said, let's build it in the way that Mutiny was built. Let's have end-to-end encryption. Let's have total privacy. You have your own private key. The only difference, instead of you having a private key that you have to write down and lock in your safe or something, we use confidential computing. We use hardware encryption in the cloud that does all the private cryptography for you. And it's a bit of a newer technology. It's kind of foreign to a lot of people because they're not in the space that we're in. But it really gives you this cryptographic guarantee that the code running on those servers is the same code that we have published on GitHub. So anybody can go on GitHub, they can see, okay, this is how Maple runs. And there's no spot in there where Maple is taking a copy of what I say to the AI and saving it anywhere. It's not making a duplicate anywhere that they can then sell to advertisers or they can use to train a future model. That's not happening. And then with this secure enclave and confidential computing, they can say, okay, that code that is in GitHub, that is what's running on the servers. I have this cryptographic guarantee. And when you log into Maple and use it, there's like this little like check mark, this little lock icon. And you can click on that and you can see like all the attestations, all the verifications that show that there's a match between the code. And we really wanted to go the full length to let people know this is secure, this is private. You can chat in here. We're effectively pulling an AI into a room with you and closing the door, and it's just you two. We don't want to know what you're talking about. So that's kind of how I got here, and awesome. Started working on Maple. And yeah, I mean, we can talk more about it, but that's where it all started.
Amazing. I have been using Maple almost exclusively for 2 weeks, something like that. And it's interesting because AI is just something that, well, this current suite of AI products is a better way of saying it, has really been such an extraordinary success from a kind of user traction perspective that, my wife and I are now actively using an AI of some form every single day. And for example, like a Google search, gone. Completely gone, right? You're no longer like browsing websites looking for information that you need. You're going to an AI, you're asking it a specific thing. And some of them are different. Like, for example, I had an experience recently where I was trying to figure something out and I used the same prompt, but into 5 different products. And I got 5 different answers. And then you could take the best bits out of those 5 and whatever. But I still hadn't asked the important question, was like, what are these guys doing with my information? Now, if the information you're sharing is like, okay, example from yesterday is one of my part of my vision, my self-image, my future self is physical health, and I'd like to be in the top 10% of men my age in physical health. Like, what does that actually look like? Okay, well, you've got to be able to sprint this fast, you've got to be able to jump this high, you've got to be a body mass index of this much. Cool, okay. Do I care if ChatGPT has that information? Not really. But some things like I've been storing in Google Sheets, for example, is like very sensitive financial information that it's a spreadsheet. It's kind of safe, isn't it? And you've gone from having an Excel file on your hard drive to then in the cloud. And what if you want to de-Google yourself? That's a whole other conversation in itself. To then like, well, maybe you're going to start having these more financial conversations with an AI. You're not even going to have a spreadsheet because you don't need to run the formulas. You're just going to ask it, here's the information, tell me what the answer is, and it'll do it. So it's a big, big subject, this. And just resonates a lot. It's like, okay, if I'm going to be using this tool every single day, who the hell keeps the information that I'm putting into it? And what does it mean if they do or don't? Um, to ask a specific question though, Mark. So as I was using Maple, so teach me a bit more about how it's actually built, because it was telling me that actually the underlying infrastructure is Alibaba, and it is it wasn't called Maple. I was like, aren't you called Maple? And it's like, no.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
how have you managed to kind of pull things together, and how does that enable the privacy?
Yeah. So that's something that we want to work on for 2026 is making Maple more self-aware. So the way that we built it is we wanted to have the entire stack be verifiable end to end. And verifiable means you can inspect the code, you can see what's going on, but then also on the AI side itself, on the models. So if people aren't totally familiar with how AI works, it's really this thing called an LLM. It's a large language model, and they are trained by different organizations, different companies. So you have Meta that has trained one called Llama. You have OpenAI, which does their ChatGPT models, and they made an open source one called GPT OSS. Then you have DeepSeek, which a lot of people have heard that word now, but that is a company out of China. And then you have Alibaba that's done some. So there's Quen, there's Kimi. Kimi's made by a company called Moonshot. So you have a bunch of different ones. And the open models, and that's really what we use to kind of quickly answer your question. We're running open source models. So we have open source code paired with these open source models. So you can kind of inspect how they behave and see kind of some of the biases and how they've weighted certain data. And we wanted to run those to make it so that everything throughout the process could be inspected by people. There are still certain parts of that training that you're not able to inspect yet. But we're always kind of looking at how are these models trained and how can we find ways to make them more verifiable and inspect them. And there are people working on solving that problem. But that's why, it told you it was Alibaba. Other people will be chatting with the Llama model within our app, and it'll say, "Oh, I am Meta. I belong, to Facebook." So that is a bit jarring to people, and so we're working on improving that to where Maple has this system prompt where it knows who it is and it knows that it's using these models, so it can better respond to people. But really, that's what you're seeing is we're trying to do the least amount of things possible to be in between you and this model. We want you to be able to have just this tool, because ultimately, what is the most private way to use AI? It's really the most private way is to run it on your local device, run it on your laptop, run it on your phone. But these models are so large, and to get the true power out of them, you have to have not only one GPU that's really large, you have to have multiple GPUs that are running on cloud servers that are chained together to be able to run the full model. And none of us have that in our house. And we wouldn't want to have that in our house because it's super expensive. It's extremely loud. It has high power requirements. You have to get an electrician in to like put new wiring into a room just for you to run that. And so if we run local AI, we're never going to get that kind of power out of the model that we are able to download and run on our device. So we're trying to pull in the privacy that you have at home running local AI and like bring the cloud to you into your house and doing that in the best way possible. So that's why you got that, that prompt and that experience is that we are really just trying to bring this large server into your house and then just kind of get out of the way and let you talk to it from there.
Well, and oh, what a cool conversation. I didn't mind that the response was, it was like, oh, I was built by Alibaba and my name is whatever. I didn't mind that at all. Um, what was what I liked was actually learning that. It's like, okay, well, that's interesting. I don't mind if it's built by them. My then next question was like, okay, well, what happens to the information that I put in? And we can go there in a sec, I guess. But shout out to Mike Hardcastle. Mike's been on the podcast in the past, and we were having a conversation recently on Nostr about building your own AI because I'm like, oh, do you know what I'd love to build? It's like I really want to. And there was a few years ago, there was guys that were creators, content creators, and there's even a book called this, I think, Your Second Brain, something along
Okay.
those lines. It's like, okay, I need a way to catch ideas. I need a way to curate tasks. I need a way to organize my calendar. And they will use like a software like Notion or something. And they were building these big systems where like, every single highlight in a Kindle would end up in, somewhere. It was just tracking all of the activity that you did on a weekly basis. Um, I never built it, and I wasn't disciplined enough to actually use it properly, and I fell off all the different like processes I tried to build for myself. Um, but with AI, you could do it much more effectively. It's like, okay, well, this is the image I'm working towards. These are all the parameters I'm looking for. For example, in an investment decision, you have an idea. I want to start this business, or I want to build this product. Okay, douche into your AI. This is the idea. How does it match up to the self-image I'm working towards? And there's just the speed of iteration for good idea, bad idea is now 10 times faster than what it used to be, for example. You're like, okay, but I don't really want to share that with someone that I don't know. And so where's that information gone? Um, yeah, I mean, anything resonate from that
Yeah.
then, Mark? Because it's like,
Yeah, definitely.
there's so many directions you can go in, right?
Yeah, the second brain concept really resonates with me a lot. One of my friends introduced that concept to me a little while ago,
Mm,
and I like it a lot. And the piece that's missing as we come into the AI world is having that AI brain that helps you sift through all this data that you're collecting. If you truly want to live the second brain lifestyle, like you said, every piece of data that you interact with, as much as possible, is being captured into some repository somewhere on your device and then synchronized to your devices somehow. And who touches that data along the way as it's being synchronized? That's something you're always wondering. But then also, if you want to start to get insights into it, right? Because ultimately, that's why you gather this data, is to
mm,
understand more about yourself, understand how you're achieving your goals. How can you set new goals to help you like see something beyond yourself that you didn't know that you could become? And AI has the ability to help you out with that. But really, the AIs that are powerful enough that most people interact with are ChatGPT or Claude or Grok, and now Gemini with Google. And it's like, okay, you spent all this time building up data security around this data you're collecting, and then for the last mile, for the part where you actually
mm.
try to talk with an AI, you're just giving it all away in that last moment. And so we've built Maple to actually be that brain for the second brain concept,
Cool.
where that AI brain, you can, right now it's like a manual process where you copy and paste stuff into Maple and say, okay, I'm having a chat about this right now. I want to go down this topic, go down this rabbit hole. But Maple also has an API on it. And so developers who want to can take their software and they can interact with Maple programmatically through the API. And we structure the API to talk the same language that OpenAI talks. And so if there are apps out there that know how to talk to OpenAI, well, with just like 2 lines of code, they can switch over to using Maple's API. And now all of that data that is going to an AI provider is now encrypted, it's private. It's not going to OpenAI servers anymore. It's going to this encrypted backend that Maple is running on, and is end-to-end encrypted. And so you just get infinite better data privacy immediately, but you still have these AI smarts. You have this AI brain that's able to interact with your data.
Awesome. Yeah, because the economics of the business are interesting, aren't they? Because what you're pointing at is that you could build your LLM in your garage, and it's going to cost you a lot of money to build. It might be a pain in the ass to actually operate and manage, and the results actually might not be that good because how much information have you actually built into it? Whereas the sweet spot seems to be outsourcing that kind of hardware side of the business, um, paying a subscription to someone like Maple, and that's a really interesting set of kind of economic facts that I think are good business case. And for example, a self-custodial Lightning wallet, like what you mentioned, you guys with Mutiny were trying to build, but that is niche, 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 niche. Whereas like an everyday AI second brain that's private, different ball game entirely in terms of like, oh, okay, well, yeah, there's a lot more people to sell that to. So how does Maple make money?
Yeah, so we do monthly subscriptions. That's really our bread and butter. And so we people can pay monthly with credit card, or we have an annual payment they can pay with Bitcoin. We made Bitcoin annual only because it's very difficult to do reoccurring subscriptions with Bitcoin right now,
Hmm.
and we don't want to be chasing people every month and saying, "Hey, can you please renew your
Yeah.
Bitcoin payment? Can you send another one?" Whereas credit cards, you just kind of set it and then it's just on automatic and you can keep using Maple and you don't have to think about the payment portion of it anymore. And that's
Hmm.
really that there's that friction, right? Getting somebody to pay you money for something is a friction point. And with Bitcoin, the way that it's designed, which is amazing, is you have control over your payments. I can't authorize a company to come into my Bitcoin wallet and take money out of it. And so that's by design. So yeah, that's really the way we've set it up. Is Bitcoin payments are an annual payment. You get a 10% discount for doing that, or you can pay a month to month credit card. And then at that point, we don't really have any other like financial incentives. We don't monetize your data in some way, and that's kind of this world that we've lived in for the last 20 years. Is every single cloud service that we use, it's either given to us for free, or it's given to us at a discount. We just don't realize it's a discount, right? We maybe we're paying a monthly subscription service for something, but what we don't realize is that that subscription price has been lowered because the company is actually taking all that data that we've sent them and finding other ways to make money, whether it's selling advertising or improving their product or selling data share agreements with governments. That is being monetized in another way. With Maple, we're going back to the old school way. When email first came out, people were selling email services where I would sign up, I would get an email address, and I would pay you $5 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month, however much I needed to pay for you to run my email for me. And that was it. They didn't do anything else at the time. They hadn't invented all these fancy monetization models yet. And we're going back to that. When you sign up for Maple and you pay us $20 a month to use the pro account, that's it. Like we give you a service, it's always on. You can do it on your phone, you can do it on your computer. We synchronize it between the devices, and we don't have access to your data, so we can't monetize it. We don't even want to monetize it, but we can't because it's not there for us to look at. So that's the business model for Maple. We have personal accounts you can do. We have like the pro account. We have a max account for people who just need a lot more usage. And then we have a team account for small businesses, working professionals who have people that they want to work with together. So we have quite a few business accounts on there. These are people who are at legal offices, lawyers or accountants, financial professionals. We have therapists, medical professionals who are using it, people who have a lot of really confidential information that they deal with in the real world, and they simply cannot upload it to ChatGPT. It would break their agreements with their clients, and so we provide them a tool that allows them to maintain that confidentiality with their client, but also get the wonderful technology and the productivity that can come from using something like AI.
Mark, and we're bumping up on it now, so I've got one more question for you. And this is a truly selfish one, just as a Maple user. Is so when I've got my history of conversations, are each conversation interplaying with each other? So does Maple understand if I start a new conversation, everything else I've said to previous conversations are added into the new one, if that makes sense, or
Right.
not? Because
At
it's
the
interesting how they
Yes.
build on each other.
Yeah, at the time, no. Each one is independent of itself, but
Okay.
that is one of our big main focus points right now of 2026. Is we want to bring a stronger sense of memory into Maple, and so there will start to be this interplay between them. We're trying to do it in a way that kind of preserves what people expect. Some people want to have an island. Each chat is its own thing and doesn't know about the other. Other people want to have them all know about each other. So we are going to start building different concepts within the app where you can say, okay, I'm chatting here and they're all going to know about each other. Or this is one that I just want to be totally by itself. I don't want it to know about anything else. Um, we're starting to play with that, but we're bringing memory into Maple, and it's going to become even smarter and more intelligent about who you are, and you don't have to start from zero, start from scratch every single time.
Cool. Yeah, 'cause it just you notice how different products behave differently, and that was just something that I've noticed with some of the others that I've used. It does straight away. It's like, well, actually, is that useful? So in some ways, it's just if I know how it works, I can use it how it prefers, if that makes sense. So I'm actually agnostic as to which I prefer, I think. Um, well, Mark, listen. So an hour has gone by. It's been awesome to speak with you, and thank you for sharing everything about your journey. And I'm very excited for you. I think Maple's it's solving a problem that's very obvious, one, but also like I don't see anyone else doing it. So in the current AI hype cycle, like what a brilliant space to be batting in, because it's like, well, this is our very, very clear proposition. And please sign up, which I've
Yeah.
done and I've loved it. So well done on the progress. And is there anything you'd like to close out with that you haven't covered, or equally, how can people reach out if they want to get in touch?
Sure. Well, I have to say the website, go to trymaple.ai, go sign up for a free account. You don't have to pay to use it. You can sign up for free and use it every single day if you want to. Um, but I'll kind of bookend the conversation back to digital censorship real briefly.
Cool.
I wrote a long form piece about this. I call it subconscious censorship. But what we are doing as we talk to ChatGPT and some of these other products is we're creating this vulnerability for ourselves where we're giving them all this really rich information about us. And it's not just like things that we are interested in. That's how the old internet was. We would just say, oh, I like these movies, I like this music. Now we are giving them over our entire thought process. This is how I, Mark, think in my daily life and how I reason through things. And we're creating this ability for other companies to insert things into the response we get from the AI. And they could insert things or they could remove things, but they start to learn the way that we think. And so they can start to kind of move us in a certain direction, if you will, nudge us in a certain direction through the output that we get from the AI. And we won't really be able to perceive it. And I'm not saying that they're doing this, but this is a very real vulnerability that we're kind of setting ourselves up for. And Maple is trying to solve for this as well. Aside from just giving people privacy, we want to give people a room where they are free to think. They can chat with an AI and know that nobody is tampering with the output that I'm getting. It's just me, and I'm able to kind of be free to talk how I want to and to reason how I want to, and really just kind of think the way that I think. So if you would love to check it out, it's called the Free Thought Manifesto. The website is aiwithconfidence.org. That's where I'm starting to post some long form writings there. It's also on Nostr. You can just go to my Nostr account, marks at primal.net, and you can see I posted there as a long form article on Nostr as well. But yeah, follow me on X at Mark Suman, marks at primal.net, and then go check out trymaple.ai.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining today. A closing thought that just resonates so strongly as you talk through the point of privacy. Just going back to what you mentioned about the fact that you wake up, you brush your teeth, the curtains are still closed, you walk downstairs, you might open the blind at the backyard, so you've got your backyard open. Eventually, you've like had a coffee and you've got the kids dressed, and you've walked out the front door. That is a private start to your day that the world doesn't need to see that, and you haven't shown it to anyone. So how you behave digitally is just the same in many ways. It's like an idea, which then is a word, that's then an action. And it's this whole concept of like the freedom of speech being on a spectrum, essentially. It's like, okay, well, on the one end, it's like, oh, this is police. We've got to police this hate speech. It's like, well, you either believe in letting people say what they want and thinking what they want, or you don't. And so the ability to have an AI tool that gives you privacy, incredibly important thing in this world. So I really wish you all the very best building that. And thank you for your time today, Mark.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Nice chatting.
Thank you.